wanted to share a hopefully fairly brief video on how I go about putting the pattern on this. The actual design process is the same as always for me on the computer, kind of copying and pasting and creating the stuff on an actual image of the plate that I'm going to carve, so I know everything lines up exactly. But there is some kind of nuance and different techniques that I use for a plate like this. It's 14 inches in diameter, so bigger than a standard printer, 8.5 by 11. So have to do some different things there. Kind of working from the outside in. One thing is I do create this border by hand instead of trying to print that, and that's because the irregularities, for one thing, that these plates are not exactly stamped out by machines, so they're not exactly perfect. So I would still need to take the picture and create each one of these separate sections independently anyway on the computer, and so I don't know that it really saves me much time, and it has to be for each separate plate, so it doesn't really save me much time to do it on the computer. I don't think. But aside from that, lining it up would be pretty fiddly and trying to get everything exact, so I think it's just quicker and easier to do it by hand. And I've shown this in a video years ago now, kind of the process of how I get this consistent border. The outermost line is with this kind of pencil here that I just follow and trace along, and I can move the pencil up and down this kind of cone shape to change how wide that border is. So that gives me the outside border, and then I just eyeball it to do the rest of that border shape. And I think as long as they're pretty close, looking at it, your eye's not really going to notice any subtle differences. But once I create that, that's when I then take the picture of this, so I know exactly how much space I have, how much padding and stuff, including that border. And so normal process of creating, and then before I print, I add these kind of grid lines. You can see a center line there that lines up with that top peak. There's kind of a faint one here that lines up, and then again on the sides here. And those are little markers that I've learned to include before printing to help me line up and make sure that everything is centered and even based on the plate. And so the strategy that I use for printing these things is I used the center rosette and the names. I want as many pieces to be printed at the same time as possible to minimize the amount of aligning that I have to do manually on the plate. So I used the names and the rosette printed together, and as you can see, it's a little bit wider than I can print, so from here to here was cut off by the printer, and I just had to fill that in by hand, and which isn't too bad. It's only a few inches there, and very simple to recreate. And that left me then with the sides and the date at the bottom. So I left these three intact, and I left these three intact, those kind of images there, and then did the date and the bottom separately. And again, it's not too bad with these lines. I know that as long as this line is vertical and pointing at this bottom point, then it's going to be lined up, and so then it's just a matter of up and down, find the nice balance point. And same with these. I get this lined up horizontally, so it's pointing at this and going through the middle of the board, and then it's just up and down to make those, or not even up and down, it's side to side for this one to get it the same. And so there, the tricky part is getting the two sides to be even, but in this case it was kind of helps with how tight the golf clubs are here. There's not as much kind of question or wiggle room there. So yeah, that's some of my techniques. Do the tricky individual parts by hand, using the tool to get that as consistent as I can, printing as many pieces together as I can to minimize how much I have to do on the wood, and then adding these lines to help me line things up. Before that, I was kind of putting lines on after the fact, or putting dots and trying to line things up, and that's a little more challenging and time consuming and prone to error. So using these grid lines really helped facilitate the process and take the question out, because it's really annoying when I think it's lined up and I put the pattern down and then I realize it's clearly off, and then I have to erase the whole thing, and that takes up a while, and reapplying the pattern risks burning the wood as well, because it's already had the heat applied to it. And so if I'm not careful on the second application of the pattern, it's easy to create some dark spots and burn the wood. So I really want to try to do it in one go for those reasons. But that's some techniques for doing large patterns like this if you're printing and trying to minimize applying everything by hand.